We as a society don't get to pick and choose which of our rights in the Constitution are more worthy of protecting than another. Now, these words are powerful and relevant as they were when our founders included the Second Amendment in the Bill of Rights as they are today, because the Democratic Party's hatred of the Second Amendment and their increasing authoritarian instincts pose a serious threat to our freedoms and is exactly why our rights shall not be infringed. Our founders were visionaries in many ways, and they recognized that our freedoms come from God, not the government. Unfortunately, the Democratic Party leaders reject this truth, and as a result are openly hostile towards people of faith and spirituality, actively trying to undermine our religious freedom and therefore the spiritual foundation of this country. We've seen over time how high-profile Democratic leaders mock or openly discriminate against people of faith, especially Christians, as we went back to the nomination of Amy Coney Barrett to the Supreme Court, her faith being judged. We've seen most recently the FBI setting its sights on those they deem as radical traditional Catholics, suggesting that they need to develop sources within the church and go and monitor people in their place of worship. One of the characteristics of a radical traditional Catholic is you choose to go to traditional Latin Mass. Insanity. Thomas Jefferson said, "God who gave us life gave us liberty. Can the liberties of a nation be secure when we have removed a conviction that these liberties are the gift of God?" To recognize each other as children of God is to appreciate that every one of us belongs to God and to no one else. No government, no person, no individual has the right to take away the freedom that God has given us. This is the foundation of the social construct that is the United States of America. This is the core of who we are as Americans. I love you too. And we love and respect each other, recognizing that we are all children of God. We recognize that each of us has this intrinsic right within our own hearts to have a deeply personal relationship with God, and the freedom to express and practice that faith without fear of any state-sponsored reprisal or censorship or discrimination. Any political party that is trying to erase the presence of God from every facet of public life, as the Democratic Party is doing, and is hostile towards those who choose to worship God, they cannot be trusted to protect our inalienable God-given rights enshrined in the Constitution and should not be in power. Unfortunately, we live in a country today where the Democratic Party, in their blind pursuit of power, reject this truth. They refuse to recognize that we are all God's children, and therefore they reduce each of us to the color of our skin. They're using identity politics to tear us apart. They are fomenting anti-white racism and fanning the flames of divisiveness, all for their own political gain. And what's so disturbing about this is they are proud of it. This is not something happening behind the curtains. President Biden's press secretary, I think you probably saw the other day, she was there at the podium in the White House listing off proudly all of these statistics and quoting the quote-unquote diversity of the Biden administration, talking about gender and race and sexuality, but not talking about capabilities and accomplishments. They're directly betraying Dr. Martin Luther King's dream as they racialize every issue, doing the exact opposite of what Dr. King preached, judging us purely based on the color of our skin, rather than on the content of our character. They've become the racists that they claim to hate, and dangerously they reject things like objective truth. They reject the fact that there is such a thing as a woman. I think all the ladies here can attest to we are in fact real. Yes? Now, I've seen and I've been and I served in Congress for 8 years, and I've listened to these speeches where they claim to be champions of women and equal rights and self-proclaimed feminists, but the reality is the Biden administration is spitting in the face of every one of us as women by rejecting the fact that we as women exist and are not just a construct of someone's mind. And this right here is their hypocrisy exposed. There is no greater expression of hatred and hostility towards women than trying to erase us as an entire category of people. Even worse, they're going so far as to claim that it's sexual harassment to address someone by the wrong pronouns, trying to enforce compliance by regulating our speech and thought. The danger here is that when those in power deny the existence of objective truth, we take away all boundaries in our society, and the truth becomes whatever those in power say it is at any given time. Just to list a few examples of this insanity, they are trying to tell us pedophilia is normal because minor attracted persons should be respected and accepted, and allowing these people to go and teach our kids in school. It is sick. They support and promote the mutilation of children through the use of puberty blockers and chemical castration and irreversible surgeries, all in the name of so-called gender-affirming care. This is being actively promoted by cabinet members in the Biden administration and President Biden himself. And it's not just an idea. They are threatening to take children away from parents who refuse to comply and are actually standing up for the safety and well-being of their kids. They're normalizing infanticide by advocating for abortion on demand without exception, even up to and after birth. They believe that government is responsible for raising our kids, not our parents. Terry McAuliffe in Virginia saying, hey, you as parents don't get a say in your kids' education. These things go beyond simple differences in opinion or having different views on an issue, because the party that is in power in the White House right now is weaponizing the security state and federal agencies against political opponents and those of us who dare to challenge them, those who dare to speak truth and common sense in the face of their insane radical agenda. The strength of our democracy relies on our trust, we the people's trust in the rule of law, and by weaponizing these public institutions for their own benefit, Democratic leaders are undermining the rule of law and turning our democracy into a banana republic. Now, the list of examples of how they're doing this is too long. We don't have enough time to go through them today, but just to name a few, you remember Obama using the IRS to target conservative organizations. We have Biden's Department of Justice arresting peaceful pro-life protesters and sending them to prison. He's labeled supporters of President Trump as the most extremist group in our country and a threat to our democracy. They created the Domestic Terror Unit, the Department of Homeland Security, to go after parents for having the audacity to show up at their Board of Education and say, we don't want you teaching our kids about sexuality. We don't want you taking them to drag shows. We don't want you bringing sex toys to second graders in school. Of course, we had Chuck Schumer directly threatening Supreme Court justices with consequences if they dared to overturn Roe v. Wade. When the party in power doesn't believe in the rule of law, but they're the ones responsible for not only writing, but enforcing those laws, our democracy is doomed. There are a lot more examples I could give, but the most pressing and urgent existential threat of them all is that President Biden has pushed us, the American people and the world, to the precipice of nuclear war, waging a new Cold War, risking the start of World War III that can only result in destroying the world as we know it.